Right now in Canada, we're going through a situation where Bell Media is trying to purchase Astral Media for $3.38 billion. Now, this purchase will increase their market share from 29% to 38%, although Bell Media maintains that it would only be 33.5%, not 38%. But from the research that I have done on it, it looks like it'd be a lot more likely to be 38%. And now the other television companies in Canada, Eastlink, Cogeco, Quebecor, others, they're all going to the CRTC, the Canadian Radio and Television Communications, to the regulatory body to stop it, to stop this merger, claiming that it would take up too much of the market and it would reduce original programming, it would increase the prices of service. Now, obviously these things are true, and they would happen. That's absolutely true. From this standpoint, under these objective conditions inside of Canada and its media right now, it would be better that Bell Media did not buy out Astral Media. Of course, overall, it would be far better if they just nationalized the entire television, radio, and telecommunications system under one state enterprise, not a monopoly that's regulated by the state, an actual state company, which would be a lot different, and these things could finally focus on producing actual Canadian content as opposed to just buying American TV shows and then putting them in. But that's really besides the point. Now, it's interesting here to note how Quebecor is, along with all the other companies, going to the regulatory body, the government body, to try to get this buyout stopped. Which is interesting because Quebecor has spent, and it's the president and CEO, Carl Pelado, has put a great deal of resources into all the media owned by Quebecor to constantly slander state regulation of every industry, including the television industry as well. Given that recently one of their journalists, Ezra Levant, said, "Chinga tu madre, go F your mother," to a businessman in Colombia, and they suffered a fine because of that, because they were signed on to the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council, which is voluntarily joining, and they continue to insist that they were forced, even though they actually weren't, and are actually lying when they actually say it, because it's a voluntary body. And then Ezra Levant spoke to the head of Global TV on his show, and the guy just pwned the hell out of Ezra Levant. But the point is, Quebecor, the most rabid right-wing, get government out of everything media outlet, is one of the ones going along with this and trying to get the government to stop the buyout, showing a total hypocrisy. Trying to get the government to stop a buyout while they're constantly complaining that government is interfering in the industry. It's just simply ridiculous. Now, interestingly, it's even a greater hypocrisy. Quebecor, QMI, have relentlessly attacked the CBC, the state-owned broadcasting company, and saying that it needs to be deregulated and that it needs to be sold off and privatized. And of course, Pelado is looking to buy up all its assets. Quebecor is. I mean, on the owners, the board of Quebecor is Brian Mulroney, who is the former Canadian Conservative Prime Minister, who no doubt would have connections to Stephen Harper, the current Conservative Prime Minister, and the really obvious plot that's behind all that. Now, it's interesting to note that they're doing the exact same thing. They're trying to get the CBC privatized so that they can buy it up, while complaining that a competitor is trying to buy another one of its competitors. So essentially they're complaining about them trying to do the same thing that they're doing. And that's par for the course. And with all the media companies that are standing there with Quebecor saying that, I'm not implying that Quebecor is leading the charge, I'm just saying that they're all trying to stop Bell from buying out Astral Media, they would do the same thing. If given the chance, they would buy out one of their own competitors and grab a bigger share of the market. That's obvious. They would do the exact same thing. And in turn, Bell and Astral Media would turn around and try to stop that buyout from happening. It's just one of those hypocrisies of capitalism where they all want the government out of the industry so they can maximize profits doing whatever greasy, unethical garbage possible to do it. But they want the state to come in and stop somebody who would get an advantage over them. I mean, it's just a typical hypocrisy. They want state out so they can do whatever they want, but they want the state to come in to stop their competitors. It's just a usual hypocrisy that's very common among all industry. Every industry that whines about government intervention also wants it in there to protect their interests when the time comes. They're just whining when things don't go their way. I mean, this is an example of what Marx was saying about contradictions within the ruling elite themselves. True, all of these media companies have a vested interest on keeping the Canadian population down and keeping them anesthetized to what's going on, and propagandizing against us to tell us that it's the working class that's bad, and just to basically give the whole illusion over the capitalist system. Now, they all have a vested interest in doing so. However, at the end of the day, they're thinking of ways to screw each other. I mean, they have a collected interest in keeping us down, but they also have a collected interest in competing with each other. So at the end of the day, they still have that contradiction. There's contradictions even within the ruling class itself. And that's a very important thing to keep in mind, because then you have things like Zeitgeist and Alex Jones, who view the entire ruling class as this one big monolithic being, or of several families running everything, and that it's all one big conspiracy to keep everybody down. Well, no, they're interested in keeping the working class down, but then they go home at night and find ways to stab each other in the back. It's not one big black monolith. It's a bunch of very rich people trying to get over on each other at the same time, and there are contradictions with them at the same time, which is why the big monolithic idea that's put forward by Alex Jones and organizations like Zeitgeist and the Venus Project are completely wrong in their analysis, because they don't take contradiction into account. They don't acknowledge that even among the ruling elite, there are still contradictions, and those contradictions can lead to each other's downfall or each other's profit.